Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Joe.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week, we're reviewing Good Time.
Spoiler alert, it's not.
Welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring two guys getting their feelings hurt and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And shout out to Rowan Court.
Rowan Court, my
On
girlfriend. My feelings are hurt that it took her so long to submit a synonym.
Is this her first submission?
This is her first submission.
Nice. Welcome aboard.
Unless she did one before recorded history. There was a time before I was writing down.
Right, yeah.
I was submitting them, but I think I got them all.
Well, she baked us a cake, so she gets a free pass.
It evens out there. My feelings are not so
I don't
hurt.
remember what episode that was.
Batman versus Superman, I think. Because we were drinking
God.
Jaeger bombs.
And we eating an entire cake. That was... Yeah. It was cake versus Jägermeister then.
A lot of sugar,
Yeah.
a lot of sweetness. But this week we're drinking Canadian Club and Coke.
Let's get this pouring up. I like...
One of these... We're playing a little bit of the shell game. I dropped one of these Coke cans before we started recording. So one of these is going to fizz a whole lot.
That's a lot of club.
And the other one's going to fizz not so much.
Oh. Have fun, Mike.
Cheers, mate. Cool term. Maybe neither of them were carbonated.
I was in the grocery store the other day, and this
shots to measure my mouth.
fucking teenager bag boy
I just pour till the pain stops.
fucking just like dropped like a 2 liter of like seltzer water or tonic water like into the bag, and of course when I got home it fucking went off like an atom bomb in my kitchen. I was like, dude, come on.
You can't do that.
So Canadian Club, huh?
It's very cheap whiskey.
Got me going off the CC.
Because it's that kind of time in my life where we're trying to cut costs wherever we can. I was telling Joe, it's pretty good for whiskey for mixing with Coke. I mean, you don't need a whole lot to mix whiskey with Coke. But I was trying to take shots of this the other night, just on its own, and not a good. I think you stepped. We were playing Rocket League, or we were trying to play Rocket League on PS4. Mm-hmm. So we were in party chat, and you like stepped away for a minute, and I took a shot, and I like literally choked on the shot. It was just so like immediately just had that like rubbing alcohol like gag reflux.
I had it for a while. I didn't have as big of a bottle as this, but I was drinking it with water every now and again, which I thought was kind of a testament to it's not terrible. You know,
Maybe I just got a bad bottle. I don't know.
There are, yeah. Or you might just have higher standards, and I am just
I haven't bought cheap whiskey in a while. Usually I'll at least
I know
go
you
for
do.
like a...
I buy almost exclusively
Like
cheap
I'll buy
liquor.
ones that are like 25 or 30 for like the 750. I'm not saying that to brag. That's not like an expensive price, but like Buffalo Trace I think is pretty cheap for like the higher end, not higher end, but like middle shelf bourbon whiskey will be pretty good. And then this was like $20 for like the handles, like 1.75.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, this episode's a little bit of a time crunch. At some point, we're going to get a text or call from last week's guest, hopefully, because he's coming in less than an hour. So, much like Good Time, the pressure's on, baby.
Heart palpitations the entire time.
So I'll just jump right into Joe Notes and fly through those. Because Benny and Josh Safdie, who are the directors of Good Time, directed by Benny and Josh Safdie, are pretty decorated directors. And I have a little bit of a history with them, a little bit. Just because I've been watching them since.
It sound like you've got beef with.
Yeah, I have a little. They kind of
got some grievances to air about the Safdie brothers.
They kind of piss me off just a little bit. I've let it go, but I don't forget.
I was just dying to review this episode so I could call them out.
Hey, Benny! You still owe me
Still owe me
$200.
No, it's a smaller amount. It's like, we $5 in the 5th grade.
But I believe it was just Josh who directed The Pleasure of Being Robbed, which started as a short film to promote Kate Spade handbags and ended up becoming this feature-length film that premiered at South by Southwest and also played at Cannes alongside a short film that Benny Safdie directed. So big stats. And I thought this film, The Pleasure of Being Robbed, was a completely other film that somebody told me to watch, but I was essentially watching it the year it came out. I think we were in college at this point. And it was kind of blown away by it. It's very quiet, and it's very... it's kind of impressive that it's a feature length, just because it's a very simple concept of just somebody stealing shit in New York City. But it's a really great film. Then they really became the Safdie brothers when Josh and Benny directed Daddy Longlegs, which also played at Cannes. It also played at Sundance, and it won the Cassavetes Award at the 2011 Spirit Awards. That's a fucking fantastic film. Definitely watch that.
That's the budget one, right? The Cassavetes Award?
Yes.
Best film under or whatever.
Right. I don't know what the exact X amount is.
I feel like it's like
20,000 or something?
I feel like it's more than that. I feel like it's like... I'm always surprised by how large it is, actually.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yeah, I could make a movie for that amount.
They also directed a documentary, Lenny Cook, which played at Tribeca and Venice Film Festival. And they most recently directed Heaven Knows What, which played at Venice, Toronto, New York, and Tokyo Film Festival. I was not a fan of that film, Heaven Knows What. That was like a little... This film's very gritty, but that was too gritty for me. It's just about heroin addicts. So Good Time is written by Josh Safdie and Ronald Bronstein, who I can only assume is the writing partner of Josh. I think all of the Safdie brother films are written by Josh and this guy, Ronald, who is the lead actor in Daddy Longlegs. And he helped write Daddy Longlegs and Heaven Knows What. But let's talk about Good Time. Good Time was nominated for a Palme d'Or and won Best Soundtrack at Cannes 2017 Cannes Film Festival. Good Time's original soundtrack was composed by I don't know how to say this first word, like 103.never. It's like an electronic producer or something. And it also included a collaboration with Iggy Pop titled The Pure and the Damned.
As the credits song that plays, that breaks your heart. It sounds like Johnny Cash.
It does. Is the untwisting of my... there's spoken word in the middle of it, and it fucking like... Oh, and
it reminds me of like depressing Johnny Cash, like when he covered Nine Inch Nails with the Hurt one.
I'll tell you, the Safdie brothers directed that music video, and I'll get into it later.
Is that Iggy Pop's voice that does that? Or?
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't realize he sounded like that.
Yeah. But just a little small inside look. Now that we do have our live episodes, which have yet to be named. Maybe we've named them by now, but 3 weeks ago we posted a live episode. But this is something I would have talked about on there, but this is a little specific to this movie. I was almost going to go to a screening where... Oh, I thought you were...
Wait, there's like a hair in the floating betwixt us.
I was so scared I thought you were waving somebody in.
Yeah, you can stab him in the back now.
Help! But there was a screening of Good Time in New York City with producer Oscar Boyson and Casey Neistat of YouTube fame. And Casey Neistat, if you're familiar with him on YouTube, definitely check him out. Very cool vlogger. I think he's one of the biggest people on YouTube right now. But I think Casey was the executive producer on The Pleasure of Being Robbed, and then he was just like a producer on Daddy Longlegs. He had some sort of film company with his brother, and I think their first hire was Oscar Boyson, who is like, I don't know how it's all connected. I think Casey was just friends with the the Safdie brothers, and then they introduced them, or Casey Neistat hired basically like their biggest producer that they have now. And I think Casey, to some extent, is still funding their films, but there's like, if you look in the IMDb credits, like it was kind of cut off after Daddy Longlegs or whatever, but there's still funding that I think he's giving them. And obviously he's got, I mean, right after Daddy Longlegs was made or released, I think Casey and his brother got their HBO series. So his life kind of started going in a different direction at that point. But I think it would have been a really cool Q&A to kind of see what kind of beginnings the Safdie brothers, Oscar,
So he doesn't
Casey.
have any official role with this movie? But
No.
He's involved in the Q&A. So
Yeah.
I guess he has some insight about
Right.
the making of this movie.
Because he kind of, came up with all of them. But yeah, he was essentially a moderator / like, I helped fund this film, and him and Oscar, like if you ever watch his videos.
I guess he's also probably a bigger draw than the Safdie brothers.
Oh, definitely.
To get people to come to see a movie, a premiere, and a Q&A.
Oh, of course. I'm kind of glad it didn't go. It just looked like a real big, like, a bunch of people. No one looked like they were there for the film. I didn't really care about Casey's involvement, but I was like, it kind of looked like two birds, one stone. If I could go and get, like, a selfie with Casey, ask the Safdie brothers a question, it would have been worth the ticket price. And I was
Were
just
they there too? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been cool.
It was a lot. I think they were there. At least Oscar and Casey were there, and Oscar was the producer of the film. But anyway, yeah, let's sorry, talking fast. I just want to get as much out as I can about this film before we get into our next episode. But let's just jump right into the film. Unless you had any like notes or anything, or
I mean, I have stuff when we get to a certain part in the film that I'll bring up.
so.
Or do you want to talk about that now?
Oh no, yeah, we can talk about that at the end.
I mean, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't show up in the final cut of the movie. So
Yeah, but still, I want to talk about it during that part, I guess. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I kind of just want to start off this review like the fucking movie starts off. This
we
film.
didn't read the IMDb because you jumped right into your notes.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, read
Great.
that.
A bank robber finds himself unable to evade his pursuers.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, wow. I guess. Yeah, that's a really shitty
It could have just been
description.
a bank robber tries to evade his pursuers.
Yeah. But this film, and I think you can agree with me, is kind of a feature-length heart attack. It's just, it never lets up, but I think the opening and closing scene have a completely different pacing to it, but it's very appropriate bookends where it's hot. It comes in hot, like emotionally.
It reminded me in a weird way. I think I'm more just connecting like my reaction to the two movies, but it reminded me of like Up, where like I think I was closest to tears in the first like 10 minutes of this movie than I was for the rest of it. Yeah, just because it starts with this like really heart-wrenching first scene, which I think is also one of my favorite written scenes of the year so far, just in terms of like, this is such a great example of showing and not telling in a movie. And we have this character,
Nicholas
Nikas, played by Benny Safdie. Is
Yeah,
it Benny, who also, I didn't know what they looked like, so I thought he was in a ton of makeup. That's just what the dude looks like.
There is some sort of makeup.
They're playing up certain features, but
Yeah,
he
yeah,
also
yeah.
just he has like these kind
That's
of swollen
face, yeah.
facial features where it looks like he's almost wearing like, stuff to swell up certain parts of his face.
Right.
But he's in this meeting with like not a guidance counselor, but a counselor of some sort.
He's
or a
getting
therapist.
like an evaluation from a. Yeah.
They're basically trying to figure out where he is on the spectrum or some kind of spectrum. I don't know if it's specifically autism that this guy has.
He definitely has a
he's
mental
mentally
disability.
challenged in some way, and rather than just coming out and being like, "Here's my mentally challenged brother, Nick
Right.
Nikas," like
Yeah.
introduce him to it apart. Like they have this scene where he is talking to this therapist counselor guy, and he's like, let's move on to this next part. Like we start in media res in this meeting, and he's like, let's move on to the next portion where I'm going to ask you questions about like common idioms and phrases, and you tell me whether you've heard them before and what you think they mean. And
It's
he
like
asks,
phrase association.
yeah,
or something.
and he asks him like, don't count your chickens before they hatch. And he's like really silent for a while, and then when he finally gets him to answer, he's like, don't count your chickens. Like, Like he can't get that next level of like, you know, this is a metaphor or a whatever. This is representing something else other than what it means directly on the surface. And it's such a great way of like getting across like that this guy is mentally challenged in some way without just being like, here's this my mentally challenged brother Nick Nikas. Like it's a really great piece of screenwriting. I thought I was hooked.
Oh,
right
definitely.
From that first scene.
I'll go on and on about like there's so many great lines that Robert Pattinson has too that are like just chilling or whatever, but because he to some extent is mentally damaged in a certain way as well. Yeah, but there's like also like squeaky wheel gets the grease, and like Nick just has these really like gruff, like one-line responses that speak so much volumes about.
Does he talk similar to that? Have you heard him talk before?
He's just a normal guy.
So then it's a good performance.
It's a wild performance.
He talks like within his mouth, like he can't get like the words out of his own mouth.
He literally
chickens before they hatch. Like he can't like really like get the words out.
Because he also has like hearing aids, if like when they do like really. So he's definitely hearing impaired too. He just has a real shit situation going on. Because he does like literally listen to like 2 seconds of an interview, he sounds like you know, like it's a really well done performance, and I'll talk more about like
it's also I was just looking up like pictures of him and like just in this movie, like they make him look I think uglier than he actually is, because you look like pictures of him and he wears glasses that like they make him like 10 times more attractive they just fit his face.
Yeah, he does.
he was dealt an unfortunate set of cards with the way that his face looks, but when he puts the glasses on, you're just like, dude, that's a fucking cool like hipster dude. Then he takes the glasses off and you're like, oh yeah, that guy's mentally challenged.
Because his brother's interesting looking too. He kind of like sometimes he looks like
they don't totally look like they're brothers, like as much as like, you know, like Joel and Ethan Coen.
Yeah,
like they're obviously brothers.
But I think what I was getting to was he, you know, with this phrase association, he has these gruff one-line responses that definitely speak volumes about his years of just what has to be family neglect and abuse. And whereas he's kind of buckling under this kind of years of abuse, immediately we're introduced to Robert Pattinson's character. I forget what his name is.
Connie.
So
he's
who's kind of like,
it's short for I can't remember what the name Constantine or Constant something.
I have no idea. I don't even know. But it's kind of like where his brother's buckling under, he's kind of like rebelling, and we see that almost immediately how they've both kind of reacted from some sort of family neglect.
Is that how you interpreted it? That his grandmother was actually abusive in some way?
I think often in these sort of scenarios, a grandmother takes over kind of from, I don't know. I think that's the beauty of this movie, is that you can kind of paint your own backstory. Obviously, they've had a
touch back on this when we get to like the ending of the movie. I think I have a totally different interpretation of that.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. But I just wanted to read this because it's really interesting, because they have, I mean, we've seen a lot of films where somebody has a mental disability, and I think this is handled really, really well within this film. And I just have like quotes from Josh and Benny, and Josh said, we were looking into casting actors with real disabilities, and we were very far along in the process, and we were interviewing a lot of people. But we ended up looking at our schedule, which was very aggressive, and a lot of scenes called for intricate blocking and action set pieces. Because of this, in the end, which is essentially an action movie, we realized that the actor wouldn't have much agency in those scenes. We'd be pushing them and manipulating, and that crossed a morality line for us. And then Benny says the last thing we want to do is have that character be taken advantage of from behind the camera. So I think from there, Benny was able to do like a lot of research into, you know, how to play something like this, because this is kind of one of his first like acting roles, which I thought was.
Oh, they don't typically act in their movies? I haven't seen anything from the Safdie brothers before.
Yeah, no, he's never. I don't think he's been in front of the camera besides, there was some other film where he plays a very small part, and he kind of plays like a kind of similar character to this. It's in another indie film I watched this year, but so it's very striking.
It's the type of performance that's like, you have to look a certain way already. Like you have to have a sort of sympathetic look to you already, and then this is not to take anything away, because I think I like his performance more than I even like Robert Pattinson's in this movie. I think he's incredible.
Right.
But I think it is a somewhat simpler performance to get across. The performance is more preparation, I think, and the decisions he makes before. I don't think it's that hard once you make those decisions to play the character that he's playing in front of the camera. It's quieter. He's playing the type of character that is shy, that doesn't. I've met people that are mentally challenged like this before, that haven't been able to really step outside of their shell. They're very reserved in situations with other people, and that's the kind of character that he's playing, where he's very quiet all the time. You know, his therapist can barely get him to like get the words out. Like, he'll keep asking him questions and he just won't answer, and he'll take it like 3 times before he's like, "Don't count your chickens before they hatch." Like, or
did you almost like cry during that scene?
Yes,
though?
that's why that scene,
did cry
when the first tear starts like dropping,
because it's so
he's so like just like stone faced, and then the tears start dropping. And you're like, oh no, like he knows, he's not enjoying. He knows, and he's not enjoying this. And then when he starts getting really tense, when he's like, what are you writing there in your notebook? And
Who
he's
you
like,
showing?
Just notes for me. And he's like, I don't like when people talk about me behind my back, like when I'm not there, like, and he gets really tense. And that's the first thing he says when his brother, who you can tell is like a source of like refuge for him, comes in, and he's like, he was writing stuff like in his notebook about me, and he's like, fuck him.
Robert Pattinson's like, then fucking take it. He like takes the paper from off the desk and rips it, and then they're like walking down the hallway, and the therapist is like a really great too. Like, he's just, I can't even think of him as an actor. He just seems like somebody who is
I've
actually
definitely
doing
seen
this.
him in stuff before,
Really?
but similar roles. I can't remember what I saw him in.
But he just like looks at Connie and he goes like, shame on you, Connie. And like, he's like ripping him down. He's like taking him like down the hallway or whatever. And Robert Pattinson like points at like another retarded guy just kind of like staring into space in the hall. And he's like, is that what you think you are? And it's like very powerful. Yeah.
You get a really good, again, this whole first half of this movie is really, I mean, the whole movie is pretty good screenwriting, but the first half especially, just the way they establish Nick's character very well in that therapist scene, and then through Connie coming in to sort of rescue him from the situation, we established their relationship very well. And then like a throwaway sort of line like that where he's just kind of throwing it out, like, you know, that's what you think, is that what you think you are? Like, we get so much about their relationship, about how like probably his problem, and you get almost an insight into like his relationship probably with his grandma, because I think probably his problem that Connie has with the grandma is that his grandma wants to take him to group therapy and to all these things to help him with this obvious problem that he has, and Connie wants to kind of treat it like, you're like, no, he doesn't have a problem. He's fine. Like, he can go rob a bank with me like we're about to do. And he can, you know, be an integral part of all the stuff that I'm about to do. And he doesn't want to coddle him in any way. Right. And he keeps sort of treating him like he's like a big, you know, big boy, big kid. Like,
I think he thinks he can raise, like, there's also some sort of parental theme in here where I think he kind of barges into that office like he's his mom or something, and he thinks he has like what it takes to raise and show him, like, instead of like anybody else in this world too. Yeah. And that's kind of, in a way, you know, because they do this bank robbery and only Nick gets caught, and Connie, who, I'll get back into this, is what we find out to just be completely a scumbag, really. A scumbag main character.
He's a sociopath, in my opinion. Yeah.
You're right, yeah. But there is this everlasting love that he has for Nick, and that's all he can think about. That's what's driving. That's like the fucking coal and fire that's like running this like movie straight ahead. And I don't know where I was going with that. There was something that there was some sort of quote that I was gonna
from Connie.
It was literally in, my gosh, let me like look real quick, and then if I can't find it, I don't know, maybe it was just like, so it was in a comment in like the music video or whatever that they directed, because it's almost the music video for that it's a really interesting music video. I don't really like it that much, but the Safdie brothers directed it for what's his name, the guy who composed their song, and who the fuck was in
Johnny
that.
Cash?
Yes, Johnny Cash. I literally,
Back from the dead.
I literally fucking forget his name already.
Iggy Pop?
Yes, Iggy Pop. But they directed this music video, and it's kind of weird.
Before this movie, they did this?
Well, this song was specifically made for this.
Oh, the music video for the
Yeah.
the Pure and the Damned.
Yes. And it's very strange. It's very, very, very abstract. Nothing like this movie, but it shows Robert Pattinson as this character. His hair's not dyed, and it's kind of this weird scenario where what if they made it to Virginia with the money, and he's like protecting him inside this house in Virginia.
And it has Benny Safdie in it too.
Yes, yeah. And it's very, very bizarre. Like, it's just something you have to watch. It's very, very quick and short. But somebody said in the comments something that, like, really, like, moved me. It was just kind of like, this is a movie about, fuck. I wish I... Oh, never mind. That was a whole other thing. Okay, Emily Yoshida of The Vulture said, for all of its throttling thrills, Good Time is a film about destructive love and loving someone despite not having the right kind of love to give them. And I thought that was, like, so powerful. Like, because that is, like, he's he's doing what he thinks is right for his brother, kind of, yeah. Sorry I fucking went off on a whole thing, but I'm glad that Brothers directed this, because there is a very fraternal theme in this movie.
I think it captures brotherly love in a way that only brothers could probably write and or direct. Mm-hmm. It's just it's like just the depths that Robert Pattinson's character Connie is willing to go in this movie, just to get his brother out of like small situations like being in the hospital or being at Rikers Island, like not even just to get him out of the amount of shit that he's about to be in for the charges that he's like, he just doesn't want his brother to be in the jail at that time because it's dangerous, he thinks, for his brother there, which it ultimately proves to be since he turns out in the hospital, but just the shitty things that he's willing to do, because you get the feeling that I think he has his own sense of morality.
Yes.
And I think he's throwing some of that to the side.
Oh, definitely.
For this. Mm-hmm. But I also think he doesn't have a whole lot of remorse, which is why I think that he's to some certain degree a sociopath in this movie. Like, I think he really only has true empathy for his brother and maybe like animals, because there's a whole weird storyline with like, I love that.
It's very Tony Soprano, you know? It's just kind of... Yeah, I was going to say, I had like this whole thing where it is like the character of Connie, I was talking about this before, played by Robert Pattinson, is somebody who simply just takes advantage of people. He's more or less a scumbag, but he has this acute talent to kind of survey a landscape and see how to use it, or like how he can take advantage of everything that's laid out in front of him.
The way I wrote it down was he's a quick liar. Like he sees something and he's just like, all right, this is like when the Domino's manager, after they rob the bank, the lady at the bank puts a like paint bomb or whatever the device is that sprays paint so that the money is tainted, and then you can obviously tell who just robbed the bank as you're looking for them in the immediate aftermath of a robbing. And they go into a Domino's bathroom to wash the paint off of everyone, and the Domino's manager is like banging on the door like, get out of here, like you shouldn't be in this bathroom. And he just immediately comes up with this lie like, oh, my brother got hit with like a paint can from a paint truck and we're just trying to wash it off as an emergency. Like, he just comes up with this lie like immediately as this guy is like banging on the door in this very tense situation.
Then he goes to like, I'm gonna buy something. My brother's mentally challenged. He's like kind of like going rapid fire with like how to hit people, you know, like and again, he's taking advantage of all these people, and he can specifically see these like little things. Like, he takes advantage of women, people of color, and Jewish people, you know, like it's kind of like, despite his like lowly upbringing and whatever this background is that we'll discuss later, he still enjoys like a measure of privilege that almost every other character in this film doesn't have, you know, whether they're
This was a very diverse film, which I enjoyed. I feel like it was showing like a side of society that we don't really get to see in film. Like, I feel like the young girl's character, whose name I can't remember from this movie, I feel like I haven't seen a character like that in film, but I've met so many people like that.
You know, people like
life.
that, yeah. They're just, I mean, the Safdie brothers being of New York City, I feel like they're just like effortlessly able to embody the ethnic and, you know, cultural diversity of the city. Like, this just feels effortlessly, where like if it was like a big studio kind of, they'd be like, and here's like the quirky black
They
kid,
have
you
to
know,
fucking
like
twist their arm to get someone of color in this movie.
exactly. And but just harping back on that kind of like he's able to. There's like literally a scene in this movie where the police come and they arrest like a 16-year-old black girl for walking on the sidewalk when they're just like when the police are standing there conversing with a white guy whose face has been plastered all over the news for like robbing a bank. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna take this girl downtown. Like, it's really raw and it's really like real world shit, you know?
That's another example. I mean, to jump a little bit forward, but that's another example. Like, one of the biggest examples I could think of him being like a sociopath is because he just kind of watches as she gets arrested, and he could very quickly just be like, no, this is definitely like, I don't know who this is.
That wasn't her. Yeah,
this is not her. You know, or he could. He's such a quick liar in all the other situations. He couldn't come up with a quick lie to get her out of that, and he just lets her get arrested. And you have that scene where she's just kind of like staring at him from inside the cop car, like "fuck you,"
because he's not. He's not trying to save anyone else, really.
Yeah.
This is just him. But I love the strong racial subtext. I mean, we're kind of about to we're into spoiler territory or whatever. I highly recommend you see this film. It's really great. But at one point they do him and this other guy sneak into a theme park, yada, yada, yada. They're looking for a bag of money, and what they end up just finding is his friend's like Sprite bottle of just pure LSD, which they take like an eyedropper and you just, you know, plop one like little eyedrop onto a tab, and that's acid. That's an acid tab. And then the fucking security guard is like, come on guys, like,
who is the guy from Captain Phillips?
He's the captain now.
Is it just Captain Phillips, or is it?
He's from.
For some reason, I want to call it Saving Captain Phillips.
No, it's just Captain Phillips. Yeah,
I'm just thinking Tom Hanks.
But what they end up.
I'm glad they found a role for that guy because he's so fucking good in
He
Captain
is,
Phillips.
yeah.
And then he's
good in this too.
He was fucking like homeless when he made that movie, and they really haven't been able to find like a role that like fits him since then. And he's great in this.
Oscar nominee, I think he was.
Yeah.
But the one kid gets detained, like Robert's friend gets detained, and then Robert Pattinson basically like, I don't even know how he gets him on the ground, but he just overpowers him, beats the shit out of him or whatever. Then the police show up. So Robert Pattinson puts on, like, again, this is how he starts to kind of like change the how he starts to change the narrative of like what's going on at this like amusement park. And he has all the security like clothes and everything, and he takes charge of the situation. But the other guy, this is like a part where I was like, oh no! They beat the shit out of him until he's unconscious, the security guard, and then he's like, this guy's not gonna fucking talk, and he pours like a
Sprite bottle of acid.
Of just, and this is like every one little drop.
I love the directing in the scene because they have one quick shot of just like Robert Pattinson as he's putting his clothes on, like he doesn't stop it. You can see he kind of has that hesitation of like, that's too much. That's too much. You're gonna fuck him up for life. Fuck it, and he just lets it go.
Right. Yeah.
And that's another great like sociopath Connie scene.
And this guy didn't really do anything. He's just doing his job, and he's just kind of at the wrong time at the wrong place. And now he's going to like forever be on acid. And
he's never gonna be the same.
But but then the police show up, the EMT shows up, and it's just kind of like all like a lot of people are criticizing this part because they're like, it kind of starts to slow down, and I was kind of like, there's still like fucking beating tension, but the EMT, like when he comes, the security guard comes to, and he's like talking nonsense because he's on a wild amount of acid. The EMT, like the two white EMTs, like look up at the cops. He's like, there's your drug problem right there. And it was like, so like nail in the coffin. This guy's.
I mean, I don't think this movie ever really slows down.
No,
it slows down for like one moment when they get to that guy's apartment after that. But it's a good slowdown at that point. Yeah, I like that scene a lot. It's good acting for the Barkhad Akbi. I probably just butchered that, but I think that's his name from Captain Phillips. And then it was really nice editing, I thought, in that scene because you have the whole interaction with the cop and the young girl with like the pink foo-foo like shit going on, which is great costuming. I thought.
Yeah.
And like they're interacting, and then they have the other cops and EMT that are bringing the guy that's just been a Sprite bottle full of acid dumped in his mouth. and then the two scenes kind of intersect in a really great way, editing wise and cinematography wise, where like you have the two of them in the same shot, sort of intersecting in a really great way. That was nice.
That's also like, I think it's such like that guy could be like, hey, I'm about to dump this acid into his mouth, but instead there's something about, there's certain close-ups in this scene where like this guy's unconscious body is rendering kind of like the amount of liquid that's pouring into his like unconscious mouth. It's just very like, this is a violent movie kind of, but there's no guns in this movie, which is like impressive, because you're like, fuck, you think somebody would be getting shot or something? And yeah, no, at times it's a very violent movie. There's not a lot of violence, but like when there is violence, it's very real. And I think it appropriately conveys how dangerous this kind of place they're in.
If we haven't like appropriately, I don't know if we've appropriately set this movie up. I feel like we just kind of jumped into and have been steamrolling through it.
We are, yeah. We don't have a lot of time, but like I want to hit all the good parts. Yeah, go for it.
We said at one point that it's like a heart palpitation nonstop, and that's something that Joe has said to me when he saw it first, which is pretty accurate. It's really just like it's that first scene with them in the therapist's office, which is really nice. It's a lot of like tight, close shots on the face. We don't really get a whole, like, you don't even get like an establishing shot in that scene. It really just opens up, to my knowledge, on one of their faces.
I think so, yeah.
In there. And then even when Robert Pattinson comes through the door, we're still getting just close shots on his face, therapist, close shot on Nick's face. And then immediately from there, I don't know if that's how it goes in the timeline, but in the editing, we go immediately to them robbing a bank with these...
Yes. I love those masks, man.
These like silicone like masks that are made to look just like random black people, and they're trying to play like black construction workers essentially.
Again, there's that like racial subtext.
Yeah. Like, and then they rob the bank, and then it's pretty much nonstop from there, where Nick gets caught by the police, and then Connie is trying to find the money to bail him out immediately.
Right.
So he goes to his girlfriend. I don't think he actually has feelings for her. I think it's just someone that he's been using this entire time, who's played really great by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who has just had like she's so good at just playing like I don't want to say the scumbag, but just like sort of dirtier grungier characters, grittier characters.
I feel like I know somebody like her in this movie.
In Hateful Eight, she was really great, despite my feelings about that movie. And then in Anomalisa, she was playing a different, not a scumbag at all, but sort of a weirder...
Very different, yeah.
A strange... Something just not quite fully registering with that character in Anomalisa. She played that to great effect. And then she's in The Machinist, too, which is a really good movie that I just watched for the first time this year. It's from like 2005.
Yeah, I like vaguely remember
the Christian Bale movie. She's really good in that. But she's really good in this movie, and I really like the scene where they go to the bail bondsman. I mean, there's a few scenes where they're there, but when he brings her to the bail bondsman, and he's like, listen, like my brother got taken by the police. He got arrested because he attacked his therapist,
who's
been abusing him. So I just need a couple $1,000.
Yeah,
you can use your mom's credit card. And then they get to the bail bondsman, and it's $10,000 that he actually needs. And there's this whole side storyline going on where Jennifer Jason Leigh's mom is very controlling. She doesn't want Robert Pattinson to come in the house when they first come in, which is also a great scene. Again, it's establishing so much shit in that scene where it's like, this is his relationship with this girl. This is his relationship with this girl's mom. This is his relationship with animals, because he has the scene where he just goes into the bedroom
with the dog.
And just, you can tell he feels like comfortable and at home with that dog, like right there. Probably about to jerk it off. We'll get to that later. And then when they get to the bail bondsman and they're trying to pay the $10,000, the credit card gets declined, and because her mom has canceled it, and she's calling her mom on the phone, and she's like freaking out, and the bail bondsman's like, "You got to shut her up!" Like,
I don't like when people scream in my office.
People are screaming in my office, and she has the one line where she's just like, "I just wanted to do good for somebody. I just wanted to do right," and it's like such a great performance. And it's so good for like the tension of this movie. Like that's where like I feel like it really starts getting like ratcheted up, like after like the physical action of the first like robbery scene, where you're just like, you can tell how tense Robert Pattinson is. And then you also have the scene in that scene where he's talking to the bail bondsman, and he's like, "All right, well, just give me the $16,000 back. I'll go get the $10,000 to come back." And he's like, "No, that's my money now. That's in the safe. Like that's my money. Go get the $10,000 and then we'll talk."
Right.
So it's just kind of like he's lost 16,000 less and he can get this other 10,000. It's just a great scene overall.
It is, yeah. And I mean, from there, he discovers from that scene that his brother can't be released because he's in the hospital because of an altercation again, which is another. Benny is that who plays Nick? Benny.
Yeah.
Benny is, and that's the other thing. He doesn't have a big part in this.
It's only a few scenes.
Yeah, but like that's all we need. At first, I was like, I gonna thought they were gonna be the two main characters, but I think it's just like a very evenly balanced movie, kind of. Again, even the trailer, like they leave in that clip of like Robert Pattinson where he's like, yeah, no, like somebody was like abusing him, kind of, and I was like, oh, okay, that's like the plot. Like you fucking fall for his tricks, even just like through the trailer. But so Robert Pattinson is like, something kicks in, like obviously where he's like, fuck, he's hurt, but then there's also that opening of, okay, he's in the hospital. Getting into a hospital is nothing compared to getting into a jail. So he literally goes into the hospital. I really love like that one scene where he goes up to the cop and he acts like
quickly lies. He's just like, oh yeah, like my dad.
He's about to die and it's like real fucked up and shit. And like
the TV turned on. Like, what the fuck is that?
he's just like, the cop deals with people like this all the time. He's not shady at all. He's just kind of like, oh no, that's the guy whose dad is dying and he's a little off, you know? Like, and he just again, he goes to two other people before that where he's kind of like, what the fuck? Like, why is my dad on the same floor as prisoners, kind of? And he like has like all these different like outbursts, and then he waits for the cop to essentially leave his post that he's guarding Benny's room, and he stays in this like room with like this woman who's kind of like incoherent, but she knows somebody's in there. And Robert Pattinson like takes like a little like container of orange juice and like very, I don't know, I love this scene, but he just like takes a drink and then like
he gives it to her first,
he gives it to her
and then
first,
he takes a drink after like this old woman who can like barely keep it in her mouth, like there's like liquid all over her face.
It's
and then
very,
he takes a drink there too.
Again, it's kind of like this weird taking care of the defenseless kind of, I don't know what that,
I think it was still more, it was still more like realizing, because he doesn't talk to her at all. He like gives her the whatever, and then he just goes and stands by the door. And it's kind of like, what can he get away with in this scene? And that was it, because she notices him in there and she's like, who's there? And he goes over and just gives her the orange juice, and that's his way of just being like, oh, like I'm a nurse or an orderly or something helping you out. And then as soon as she's like kind of checked out, he goes over and waits by the door. So I think that's another good like case for like Connie is a sociopath. And then there's the whole like fucking trying to bust him out of the hospital, which is very tense, and putting him in a wheelchair, and Benny's zonked out, and then he doesn't have anywhere to take him, so he takes him to the previous person that like he gets on like a handicapped bus that's like dropping people off from the hospital, and then he remembers where a previous stop was, and he's not on like the roster, so he drops him 2 blocks away. Again, we don't see it on screen, but you know that he lies to the bus driver. And it's like, oh, this is my house, drop me here, and then he wheels him to this house that he remembered from the previous stop, from another person that was in a wheelchair there, and he like gets let into this person's house, and then more lying ensues from there.
Oh my god. Yeah, and it's very wild, and it's the manipulation of the mother, and then it's the manipulation of, or the grandmother, and it's the manipulation of the daughter, to the point where there's some point where he's like ready to distract this girl, this 16-year-old girl, enough where he's like ready to have sex with her, kind of, and it's just like, like it's out of control.
Well, they have this is really great screenplay. They have the one scene where they're in the kitchen, and he's just like looking for food, and I don't think he's actually hungry. I think he's just he's just looking for ways to create conversation. He's trying to get her like to give him some information, and like she's smoking, and she's like, yeah, like my boyfriend's a dealer, and he's like, your boyfriend deals weed. Where does he live? And you can see the gears turning in his head of like, I need $10,000.
I'm gonna go there.
Who can I go fucking rob? And it's like this 16-year-old girl's boyfriend is probably in like high school, because he's also asking like, how old is he? How old's your boyfriend? And then in that scene, we also get across, he's like, how old are you? And she's like 16. And then later when they're watching the TV together, and his picture comes up on the news of like, oh, here's the guy who like robbed the bank that we're looking for, he like just immediately turns to her and starts making out with her, which is like that plant before of like, this girl is 16. Robert Pattinson's obviously like 30 or something in this movie. To have that scene, like, that's an example of how low and how shitty he's willing to go in order to preserve his brother's health and well-being in this movie. But it's a really shitty length. Like, I'm going to make out with this 16-year-old girl just so she won't look at the TV.
The way that he walks around that house, and like, again, it is really great script writing. He's got all these fucking balls in the air with just kind of like asking her, yada, 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 going into the bathroom, you know, looking for everything. He fucking dyes his hair. Like he's made this house his home kind of. And he is like acting like this kind of like eccentric, even more eccentric person than he actually is to her, because she thinks it's cool. And like, he dyes his hair, and she's like, why'd you do that? And he's like, I guess I'm a weirdo, kind of like, and it's totally just like, it works really well. Yeah.
The script is great in that scene too, because she's like, oh, I hope it wasn't like because you're feeling tense like in every line of dialogue in this, because it's like, you're waiting for her to be like, Grandma, the guy that you let into our house that's staying here overnight fucking stole our hair dye. But when she finally has her line of dialogue, she's kind of revealing like, oh, I hope it wasn't the one in the bottom drawer, because I don't know what color that's going to come out as. Like, she's more worried about like, how is your hair dye going to come out, rather than this strange tattooed guy that burst into our house at like 2 a.m. is dyeing his hair with our hair dye from our place.
And then we have like something that really took me, like, I mean, I guess this is like one of the biggest twists in the whole thing, is Connie broke the wrong person out of the hospital, the wrong convict. And it's crazy because like, he's covered in like this full like body cast kind of thing. And
for the face, yeah.
And then he wakes up and he's screaming, and he takes essentially Connie away from almost having sex with a 16-year-old girl, and he goes in there and they're kind of fucking wrestling, and you're like, that's not Benny's voice, kind of. And it's very disorienting, and you can even see it in his face too, and he's like, oh fuck, it's the wrong fucking guy. And then that's where he picks up with that. And I mean, they're driving around in this girl's grandmother's car, and Rob takes them to like White Castle or something to kind of like make plans with this guy in the back. And I mean, he's seen the hospital's kind of hot. Again, I hope you guys saw this movie, but if not, try to follow along, just because we don't have a whole lot of time. But one of my favorite scenes in this movie is this guy that he picked up. I don't know what his name is in the movie.
I think it is.
But like, his whole like, he's out on bail for like the first day essentially, and he goes through this 24-hour retrospect.
I like that scene. I don't like how they set it up, because he goes so far out of his way to be like, man, I don't remember anything from the day before.
Yeah.
It's so fuzzy. I don't remember anything.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But here's what happened yesterday in like explicit detail.
Yeah.
Like, if they just altered the dialogue before that so that he's not like, man, I don't remember anything.
Right.
But here's what happened.
Yeah.
Enough to show you a physical montage of everything.
Dude, and every scene is so intense. He just goes like into a fucking like corner store and starts like chugging like an airplane bottle of E&J or whatever. And then like he meets up with his boy, and then he's chugging a bigger bottle, and then he's like fucking some girl or whatever. And
they're like trading off. And he's like, are you finished yet? I want my turn.
Yeah, and then they're doing acid in like an arcade, and it's just fucking wild.
I thought I didn't know what the Safdie brothers looked like, so I thought this was the other Safdie brother.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like, oh, this is a good performance.
Dude, this guy's great. I love this guy's performance. And I love when it's in the trailer. I can't really place it in like that story that he's telling, but when he's running across the street and like his face is all fucked up and he's like very disoriented or something. Wait, now I'm trying to remember.
That's later, because he's
He's
in
his
the
face
taxi
is already
later.
fucked up.
And then he dives out of the taxi because he's like, I can't go back to jail. And the taxi driver is like, jail, I'm going to drive you right to the precinct. So he jumps out of the taxi.
There's some scene in the trailer, and I can't place it like in the movie, but he's just like running like a like crazy, like on acid.
Yeah, his face isn't fucked up. He's just running across the street when he's high on acid to get to like the Adventureland place. And he's just like, ugh.
Yeah, he's just got like he's like really good at being on drugs or whatever. Or acting like he's on drugs. But yeah, let's talk about the dog scene just before we can...
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, they
They take this fucking security guards.
The whole purpose of this story is that he's telling him about this story where they were getting chased by the cops while selling acid, so they ran to Adventureland and hid the acid inside one of the rides, and that's what Robert Pattinson picks up on, because again, he's constantly thinking of like, how do I get this other 10,000 so I can get the entire bail bonds money to get my brother out and not have wasted $16,000 that I just robbed as well.
And there is like a backpack of cash, but they can't find that. And then obviously Robert Pattinson's gears start turning, and he's like, wait, how much did you say this like bottle's worth kind of thing? You know?
So they end up, after he's stolen like the security guard's clothes that he's knocked out and framed him for the whole reason that the cops got called to Adventureland, they go to the security guard's address,
which is the most fucking ridiculous, like that's just stacking on, like, if you just like set this guy up, I feel like the time's really limited on.
There's a little bit of suspension of disbelief required for this entire plot of just like even them like leaving the hospital, like the one scene where the security guard just doesn't look up as they like roll past, and nobody on the bus is like, oh, should your brother be getting let out of the hospital even though he's in a full face cast? Like, you can't even like have his face out. Like,
it's all kind of believable.
It is, but you have to sort of stretch
definitely
your limits of belief.
But I can't believe that they're just doing this as people. They're going to this guy's house. They do it smartly though.
Like they have the Ray guy go and he knocks on the door and lets him know, who's there, and he just hears a dog and he's like, all right, let's get in. And earlier they had the scene in the car where like Robert Pattinson keeps trying to butter up this like young 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And he had a line somewhere where he's just like, I feel like I was a dog in a previous life.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they love me so much. I can't remember if that was the same scene where he's also talking to her and he's like, I feel like I'm on like a mission of some kind tonight. And I feel like our destinies are like intertwined. Like, do you feel that? And she's kind of like, yeah, I guess I feel that.
Well, I think
she's just kind of going with whatever the older guy says because he's like 20 years older than she is.
And yeah, it's playing into this kind of eccentric. I mean, I do think Connie is idealistic, romantic kind of person, but he is playing again into this kind of like eccentric, like, I guess I'm just a weirdo or whatever. And like, he kind of has to set up like the narrative before like they get dropped off at the park or whatever. And he's like, listen, you're probably going to be left here for like a long time. So he has to leave her with like, I think something very important is happening and it's deeply connected to my purpose or something. And it sounds like really great. And it's like, it's a great trailer line or something too. But
he does, I mean, we'll get into it in this, but he does have another line about purpose later on in that great conversation between him and Ray. But yeah, they knock on the door, they just hear a dog there, they get in there, and now we've established that like he has this connection to animals, so like the dog is like barking at Ray, but when he steps in there he's able to just calm the dog down immediately and it loves him.
Well, he's also like, he knows like, smell my clothes, and I'm your owner. I'm your owner.
The security guard's clothes too. So then the dog chills out and they're just hanging out trying to figure out what to do next, and he's like, how much could you sell this acid for? Call your boy right now. And the guy's like, dude, like just chill out, like we just got here, like I'm just. And then they get into this conversation where Robert Pattinson's like, you went for like the alcohol like as soon as you got here, like you're fucking pathetic, man. Like you serve like no purpose whatsoever. And then the other guy has this like retort where he's just kind of like, man, fuck you, like you're a fucking asshole. Like I'm just trying to be like real with you, and like you're not gonna be laughing when like I'm driving by in like my Lambo and you see me later in my Lambo. Like you don't know what I'm capable of. And Robert Pattinson has like my favorite line of this movie where he's just kind of like, you didn't understand anything that I was saying at all. And he's kind of like, the whole purpose of that line is like, Robert Pattinson sees his purpose as not being tied to money. Even though they rob this bank for all this money, his purpose is about providing a better life for his brother and somehow being able to better his brother's life in some way. And he thinks that there's a purpose to life outside of money. Whereas this other guy, Ray, who is he's a better person in some ways just because he's very honest. And I feel like Connie's character is just lying all the time, lie. And Ray comes clean about like everything, like right away to this guy that he's barely met. He's always being honest with people, wants to sort of have this sort of jovial relationship, although he does have his faults, obviously, because he pours acid down the guy's throat. They're both fucked up in their own ways. But Ray, despite how fucked up he is, arguably a little bit better than Connie just by having this sort of open attitude and being honest about shit and wanting to connect with people.
Yeah.
But his other fault is being obviously more concerned about how much money he's going to make and money and all that. And Connie doesn't want to just make money by selling the acid. He wants to get his brother out of this hospital because it's his sort of one weak spot and one spot of empathy. But yeah, that was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
And that's really the only scene of like real dialogue I feel like we get in this movie that isn't like, it's kind of,
because this is pretty downtime.
It's not throwaway, but it's like the only like sort of not exposition, but explaining these characters that we get. Everything else is just reacting to what's going on around these characters at that time.
One of my favorite lines, like, it's pretty reactionatory, like, because Robert Pattinson's kind of freaking out because the guy who isn't his brother just woke up and he's asking her for medication or whatever. And this is where she's like, okay, we're getting deep into this now. And then he, again, it's in the trailer. It's a great line. And he's like, don't be confused. That's just going to make it harder for me. And it's like such like a, even in the midst of chaos for him, he's able to still like control like her situation.
Like he's almost playing into this, like, to her empathy of like, help me out here, like by not hesitating at all and just doing what I'm telling you to do.
There's just
Otherwise,
so much
you're gonna hurt my feelings.
Great dialogue in this fucking movie.
But while we're in this scene, I do want to talk about the dog.
Yeah, go for it. So he calls this boy over.
I didn't know about this until after I saw the movie. I was telling my girlfriend Rowan, who had the synonym for this episode and hurt my feelings by not submitting one.
Did she watch Good Time?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I was telling her about it, and she was like, "Oh, is that the one where Robert Pattinson jerks off a dog?" And I was like, "Okay, now I have to look up what the fuck you're talking about."
What?
Because she was like, "I'm pretty sure he jerks off a dog." This, may or may not be the case, but here's what we know: Robert Pattinson was on Jimmy Kimmel. And he had this, I'm just going to read this whole long quote from his, not monologue, but what he says to Jimmy Kimmel. And he says, "There's a big dog. There was actually, sadly, another dog, which was cast, who is this big dog's son, but it died just before. Mustafa, who is the father, and this huge, huge dog was initially in the scene. My character, Connie, has this affinity with dogs. He thinks he is a dog in a previous life," which is the other half of that line that I was talking about before. "And he thinks he has control over animals. There's this one scene we shot. There's a drug dealer who busts into this room, and I was sleeping with the dog and basically giving the dog a hand job. I asked the trainer about it because the director was like, 'Just do it for real, man,' which has to be one of the Safdie brothers. Don't be a pussy." And the dog's owner was like, "Well, he's a breeder. I mean, you just got to massage the inside of his thighs."
All right.
If this just got a lot brighter in the video, it's because our
diffuser,
rigged up diffuser just fell down from the duct tape. Too late to deal with it now. I lost my place in here. "Oh, well, he's a breeder. I mean, you just got to massage the inside of his thighs." I was like, "Just massage the inside of his thighs?" I didn't agree to do the real one, so we made a fake red rocket. And then apparently the Safdie brothers responded in a joint response on, I guess they have a joint Instagram. And they said, "The truth of the story, Rob spun to be funny. There was a scene in the movie that saw Connie lying down with a dog, and because of his character being so comfortable with animals, the dog's penis distends, which is a sign of primal comfort. We had a fake dog dick made from the get-go, and that's what we shot. We joked that the real one would be way better on camera, and the trainer joked saying you could massage his legs to loosen him up, but no one was really going to do that!" Exclamation point. So who knows what actually happened? But I think there is actually a scene, because the cut is so quick in the actual movie that you don't actually... I actually remembered hearing something, because I think I had told Rowan about seeing the trailer and wanting to see this a long time ago.
Right.
And she was like, "Oh yeah, I heard that Robert Pattinson jerks off a dog." I was like, I don't think that's true. And then I completely forgot about this when I saw this.
Right.
Or that it was this movie. So I wasn't like looking for that. So maybe if you're looking for that, you can see the fake like red rocket dog dick going on in that scene.
Right.
But in the movie, it's so quick. It's just kind of like the other drug dealer comes to the house that they're at with the security guard because he's going to buy the acid off of the two of them. And Robert Pattinson locks himself in the one room with the dog. I thought that was just kind of to protect himself. In the way that it's cut in the movie, it works.
Yeah, it
like,
works
the dog
really well.
likes me, but he doesn't like the other two characters. So I'll lock myself in the room because I don't have a weapon of any kind.
And it does. It protects him against the initial drug dealer, and it uses it as a bartering technique. And I'm going to take this real quick. Yo, dude, what's up?
We'll be right back. And we're back. And I believe we left off talking about the last sort of sequence in the apartment for Good Time.
Right.
After that sort of really dramatic dialogue between Robert Pattinson and Ray in the movie, sort of revealing a lot about Robert Pattinson's character. And then Ray calls his friend to bring money over to essentially buy the acid that they're trying to sell in this movie. And then that's where the whole we were talking about the dog jerking off thing too.
Right, yeah. And we were even talking about when his friend does come over, Connie's able to sort of leverage the situation of kind of like, listen, you're not just going to give me like $1,000. I have this angry dog in here and you're going to go to the ATM. There's this whole debacle of like, well, I can only take this much out of an ATM right now. And he's like, I don't fucking care. Go to like a bunch of ATMs.
And he's not even asking for like the 10K that needs. He's asking for 15K at that point too. Like they're debating between 1K and 15K.
Right. Yeah. So the friend is able to sort of imply to Ray that he's not going to come back with money, and he's going to come back
He
with
says like, I'm going to go get Brenda, and he like
and he makes
cocks like a fake gun.
Yeah, so they're going to come back and kill Connie, and I think Connie definitely gets this gist.
Even if he doesn't, I don't think he thinks that what's this guy's name is going to come back with any money at all.
Exactly.
So he's just kind of like, fuck it, like I'm on to the next thing. I have the acid in my backpack. I'm out of here.
So then a bunch of situations, a lot of events take place all at once where Connie leaves the room and kind of makes a break for it. Ray tries to stop him. Ray gets attacked by the dog. Ray's able to retreat back into the... there's a whole thing happening in the hallway of this apartment building. Somebody sees, and obviously this person alerts the authorities, calls the police on their phone. And again, a lot of things are all happening at once.
And the dog comes out and attacks Ray while they're wrestling. So Connie's able to get away. Connie runs away, and Ray gets back into the apartment and leaves the dog in the hallway. And then we kind of see from Ray's perspective as Connie is running away, he gets tackled by the police who've been called to the apartment on this sort of like rooftop, and the Sprite bottle goes flying. So he's calling his friend to be like, oh, hey, like come get the Sprite bottle. It's like on the roof. And then Ray goes, the cops are knocking on the door.
Pounding on the door, yeah.
So he goes out on like the terrace to try to like climb out of like the apartment. And then you knew this was going to happen the moment he like,
he's on
watch.
like...
You've
like,
seen enough of this movie at this point to be like, yeah, he's going to fucking fall to his death, bro.
Like how many stories up is he?
Very high.
It's 16, 17, 18 stories, and it's kind of an incredible shot. Like, because it looks like it's kind of the most realistic thing I've seen, like somebody falling to their death, like in a movie. It's a very well done shot. I don't even know
if the prop that they throw out to fall is that realistic. I think it's just the way that it's. Well, I think the sound editing is great in that part because they have all the people on like because it's in the city. You have all these people on the street that are like screaming the moment he like starts falling. And I think that kind of raises the tension a little bit, suspends a little bit of your disbelief about this kind of obvious like doll that's falling out of a window.
I thought it was green screen because he looks like he's kind of grasping up at like, it looks realistic. Like
it might have been cut between the two.
It's in the trailer. I feel like they were bold enough to kind of show it in the trailer, but somebody on Letterboxd was talking kind of about like, we spend this entire movie having like these kind of like close-up shots, like, you know, when like Connie walks into the office in the very beginning, it's just kind of like zooms right in on him, and then all of a sudden you have this like at the end where Robert Pattinson is getting like bagged, essentially, as he refers to it. He's getting arrested or whatever.
We see his arrest from a wide shot from far away, zoomed in, and then we see him, Ray, falling out of the building from a wide shot from kind of far away.
But we also kind of get this like God's eye point of view of just like him getting arrested, and then also kind of just like this Sprite bottle just kind of like skidding
backpack,
skidding like across like the like pavement and into like just like a gross like puddle. And it's kind of, somebody on Letterboxd like wrote it like very eloquently. It's kind of like they're teaching us to look at things that aren't like, oh, that's just like a dirty criminal that dropped like a fucking gross Sprite bottle into like a puddle in like Queens or whatever, you know? Nobody knows that that's like a Sprite bottle filled with like thousands of dollars worth of like LSD and everything. It's just like a really
$15,000 worth, according to some people.
But yeah, and then let's talk about like the very final scene, which is
I was a little confused by this. I had to sort of look it up. I mean, it makes more sense after looking it up, but in the initial presentation of the movie, so you have Connie being arrested, and he's kind of just like in the cop car, and we have this like long shot that's kind of tracking in on his face, and we're getting to the end of the movie at that point, just by the length of the shot at that point.
Right.
But then we have a whole scene with his brother Nicholas Nikas, with his grandmother being taken into this sort of group counseling, group therapy thing for mentally challenged people. And the therapist has a line where he's like, your brother Connie did the right thing. It wasn't like immediately obvious to me at that point, like what did Connie, I guess because I'm so caught up in like Connie's been doing the wrong thing this entire time.
But he took the fall for the robbery.
That's what the ultimate conclusion you come to is, but it's like it's a little bit of a jump because you're just kind of like the movie has been so like minute by minute, like we don't have any jumps of time really besides like we have like a small jump when like he discovers the hair dye, and then we jump like maybe like half an hour or an hour later and he's got the hair dye already set in and he's but besides that it's pretty much like minute by minute for a lot of this movie.
It is, yeah.
So it's weird to jump like almost like a week or however many days later into like Nick Nikas has been let out of jail. The charges have been dropped. They're only charging Connie with this bank robbery,
right? And
he's taken the fall for already. It's just a bit of a jump for the movie. So I was a little confused for that when at the ending. And then we have this great scene of Nick in this group therapy session with the original song playing, the Pure and the Damned with Iggy Pop, which is another, like the beginning and the ending of this movie are so heartbreaking. Just the cinematography and the acting in this
scene really killed me. I couldn't especially after you're coming off of a very long, exhausting kind of like adrenaline fucking ride, and you already have these emotions pent up about this like specific character, and then when you see this character, and he's kind of like he is in the first scene where he's just kind of stone-faced and not participating in this exercise where this kind of it's sort of this group therapy, and she's saying something like, if this has ever happened to you, walk to the other side of the room. It's like the most
across the room,
right? Yeah, it's the most rudimental kind of like, if you can process this in your mind, then
and for the first few, I can't remember what they were, but they're distinctly things that that he should cross the room for, and it's not until it's also great that this is happening during the credits.
Oh yeah, and it's during this fucking song too. Yeah,
so it's like you technically could walk out of the movie if you wanted to. I was the only person in my theater for this, so I stayed and I was like, I'm gonna watch this entire thing.
Oh, everyone stayed in my theater. Yeah.
Were there a lot of people when you saw it, or
it's like 3?
Okay.
Yeah,
it's about as much as I expected for this movie. Yeah, so like the credits are rolling and she's asking questions that are like, have you ever lied before? Have you ever something about like a family member that you're like, that obviously applies to him and Connie, and he doesn't move. And it's not till like later when she starts getting to some other questions that he's more comfortable and he starts crossing the room. And it's this great scene that allows us to, in a short period of time, see the progression of how much better is he without Connie in his life. And that was kind of the point that I wanted to touch on later, is that Connie feels that he has this purpose to like protect his brother, but he's not actually helping him in any way. And I think he just has a difference of opinions with his grandmother about how to help his brother. And I think this scene is supposed to be evidence of, because his grandmother's the one that takes him to this group therapy scene and brings him back to this same counselor and therapist that he saw in the first scene. And I don't see really, I mean, they don't show us anything. I don't see any hint of like abuse going on in that situation.
Well, I think
that's mainly just Connie's sort of skewed perspective on the world from being like a sociopath and thinking that he's the only one that knows best what's best for his brother. He thinks that his grandmother has, fucked up ideas about how his brother is supposed to be taken care of. But this is actually the right way, because we get to see in this credit sequence his brother healing in this short 5-minute credit sequence of, in the beginning, he's just as tight-lipped and closed up as he's in the first scene, but then halfway through he's crossing the room and participating in this group activity and relating to other people in a way.
Well, I questioned that there was some sort of abuse, or there was some sort of family change-up within their family, because Like, why is he undergoing some sort of an evaluation, or why is he just getting into this group home at this age, kind of, you know? Like, I think there was maybe somebody else in there. I mean, whether it was Connie who was saying he doesn't need this, kind of, or it was somebody neglecting to get him the help that he needed, you know? Like, the grandmother couldn't have just ignored him, that he was, like, mentally handicapped for all these years, kind of. Like, I think
she could have just, I mean, did they say anything about what happened to their parents? Or
no, there's no, I think
so she could have just
draw your own conclusion.
She could have just recently come into custody of him, and,
and that's what I think,
with the parents, and maybe she's just kind of like, oh, okay, this is what has to happen. I can't care for this kid on my own at the household. He's too difficult, and
Connie can't care for him because he's pulling him into these situations. I like literally tried to tell Sabri about this like right after I came home. I was trying to tell her about the last scene, but I like literally kind of started getting really choked up about it. I was like, and it was like across the room, like, because I did.
It's the type of thing where like you get the idea halfway through, and you're kind of like, I know nothing important's going to happen. They're getting into like the no animals were harmed in the like making of this movie type like shit in the credits, but you still have to stay for the whole end of it, which I also just. I like that they made the credits interesting and worthwhile and condensed time that way. Like,
and it's also like an incredibly powerful scene too.
It means a whole lot to the movie to watch that entire scene.
There's no important dialogue. This Iggy Pop and the whatever song is like incredibly powerful. And it kind of swallows you into this just emotion. I don't know. This was it was a super emotional scene. But yeah, let's get into some fingers.
Let me pull up that Rotten Tomatoes. On review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 88% based on 141 reviews, with an average rating of 7.4 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, a visual treat filled out by consistently stellar work from Robert Pattinson. Good Time as a singularly distinctive crime drama offering far more than the usual genre thrills. That's that.
Who wants to go first? I'll go first.
Yeah, I feel like you've had more time to think about it. I just saw this 2 days ago.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've said almost everything I needed to say. I really haven't harped about how much I really fucking love this movie, but I just want to finish on some like small things that I didn't get to say during the review. I really hate reading reviews about this film about how Robert Pattinson's trying to like shed his like Twilight past. I think it's like really admirable that he could just be like coasting on like his celebrity, but instead he's using this kind of clout that he has to get important films made. I think Kristen Stewart, I feel like, is doing kind of the same thing, where she was in just like Impersonal Shopper or whatever that like really kind of small indie was. Daniel Radcliffe is obviously doing it with like Swiss Army Man.
Well, I think he hasn't really had like those people have had bigger roles in other movies that are different from their sort of franchise fame. I don't think he's done like exclusively pretty small indie.
Robert Pattinson?
Yeah, the only other one I can remember is the I want to call it A Walk to Remember. I know that's not the name, but it's something.
The 9/11 one.
The one with Mandy. Is it Mandy Moore or who? No, the girl from Lost.
Okay.
The blonde girl from Lost. I don't
really
remember her name. But he was pretty good in that.
Yeah.
That's the only other thing that I've really seen since Twilight.
There was something like I haven't seen.
Have you seen Twilight?
Yeah.
Shitty fucking movie, but he's pretty good for what he's given.
I think him and Kristen Stewart are fine actors. I mean, I'll just close off this thought, but I don't know. Robert Pattinson's totally done like this 180 in my life. Like he has to be cool as fuck. Like he's
even when Twilight was going on, he was like shit talking it all the time, and he was very clear about that it was just sort of a stepping stone for him. And
I mean, like, I don't know how he kind of got into working with the Safdie brothers. Apparently, he was also a delight to work with. Like, he wasn't like really stuck up. I don't know how he's managed to go from Twilight to kind of like work your way into all these like super artsy but grimy like niches I'm into. Like, what's it called? It's like Robert Pattinson. Like, how are you hanging out with like the incredibly like elusive Death Grips and like recording like, he like did a guitar part on Government Plates. He goes to like,
he was in I didn't see it yet, but Cosmopolis I heard good things about.
Oh, okay, yeah, same. But yeah, I'll just Also, it's just I fucking love these fucking directors. There's like a bunch of just like Instagram pictures out there of Benny Safdie like holding like a boom mic while he's just in like full Nick makeup and costume. I was just like, God damn it. You guys made this fucking movie, and it's like just a really like great, I don't know. I think Robert Pattinson, this is the best performance I've seen this year. Like lead, if in that specific category of lead actor, I think the Benny really knocks it out of the fucking park as Nick. Just there's so many great performances. I would take these all. It's not gonna happen. I don't think. I don't know. I think they might recognize like Robert Pattinson at the Oscars or something. I've been reading kind of
if nothing else comes out.
Yeah, right. Maybe. But the cinematography should be up. The soundtrack should definitely be up. Or the score. I would put Benny up. I would put like almost everything in this movie up for the screenplay. I don't know. Yeah, but to close out, like this is like the first film. We've been doing this podcast for how long? 2 years?
It'll be 2 years in November, yeah.
Okay, almost 2 years. And like this is the first movie where like I really like left my body like as like being like, oh, I'm gonna talk about this later on a microphone for a podcast. Like I was totally just invested as an individual watching a film. Mm-hmm. And this is gonna sound crazy, and maybe my opinion will change. I've had a lot of time to think about this movie. But I think this is the best movie I've seen since we started doing this podcast. That's fucking...
So I know what your score is.
That's wild, right? Yeah, I'm going to give it 5 fingers. I don't know. This is
Joe's first 5-figure in a while.
It's this...
Since like Swiss Army Man or
this
something
season,
like that.
Yeah. This season of our podcast, yeah. This is my first perfect score.
Damn.
I wish we had a fucking guest for this so I could share this with somebody. Yeah, but like we had a whole like musical chairs situation with guests and yeah.
So I'm not going to give it 5 fingers, but I do have a high opinion of this movie. I think it's one of the most like visceral experiences I've had this year, other than maybe Dunkirk. And I think you compared it to Dunkirk pretty accurately. That it's just like you said, it's like 3 hours of like heart palpitations, whereas like Dunkirk is really played up by that soundtrack. I don't think the soundtrack accentuates the tension as much in this.
Oh right, yeah.
But I think the screenplay does a better job in this than it does in Dunkirk. And I do like Robert Pattinson's performance. But I'm a little confused, I think, by how much it's being played up. Like, I think in the trailers, they have a quote from someone who's like, Robert Pattinson's like the next Robert De Niro. I don't know where that comparison is being drawn.
It's this. Have you ever seen Dog Day Afternoon?
No.
It's just like a really similar film to this that was from the 70s, and a lot of this kind of draws from that. I don't really see the comparison either, but they're always like, this looks like, it does look like kind of like a very like Martin Scorsese movie on like acid, and it looks like Robert De Niro kind of when he was younger and better.
The only comparison I can really think of is just that Robert De Niro is really good at playing like kind of like an asshole, like in a lot of his movies. Like in Taxi Driver, he's sort of an asshole. Right. In Raging Bull, he's kind of an asshole. Just in a lot of his movies, but I don't know, he's not really. I feel like Robert De Niro is really good at sort of playing someone that's somewhat similar to his aesthetic in a way. Like he's not really stretching himself aesthetically. It's more of a more emotional performance from...
I'm sorry, that was Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea where the Robert De Niro...
I still don't know where the comparison comes from.
Yeah.
He has a more like a emotional performance where it's still somewhat close to his accent and his upbringing and stuff like that. I feel like in a lot of his performances, whereas Robert Pattinson like he's British or Australian or something.
He's British. Yeah.
He's not American.
No.
And a lot of this, like he's portraying like a pretty accurate like person from Brooklyn or New York or something like that. Like he's stepping outside of himself aesthetically while also stepping outside of himself emotionally in this role. So I don't really understand the Robert De Niro connection that a lot of these trailers are making.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a great performance, and I've always kind of respected him as an actor. But I think Benny Safdie kind of steals the show in this movie in a different category for supporting actor, obviously. And I think it's very tense the entire way through, and the only complaints that I really have are maybe just that there's too much suspension of disbelief I think, in a lot of the scenes. Like, there's a lot of scenes where I was just kind of like, I don't know if I'm following you guys on this one. This is a little bit too much. Even if I'm following the emotions, I'm maybe a little bit confused about the logistics of some of this stuff. And
It's kind of like a GTA campaign.
would a cop really not? Yeah, there's a lot of like sneaking and like sleuthing around. Where like there's cops that are like, you know, just looking one way while they just kind of walk by, and it is kind of like, oh, like Metal Gear or something, where like you can see where like the security guard's like view is in that direction, and you sneak by in the other way. And yeah, I really like the script for this movie. I think this is one of my favorite scripts of the year for sure. I think the only other real complaint that I have is that I wish that this movie maybe settled on more of a message.
Right.
Because I think the script is so good that I just wish it would rise to that next level of like, it's really good on the superficial level. Like the soundtrack's great. The cinematography is great. The acting is great to look at and interesting to look at. And it rises to that sort of second degree of like, you know, characters maybe saying something that's not fully what they mean, and there's another intended meaning behind all that in the dialogue. And I feel like it doesn't really rise or sink to that like third level of like, there's something else beyond. They're not only not saying what they mean, but it's meaning something for the movie at large. Right. And I feel like we only get sort of hints of that from like his sort of relationship with animals, and the one scene where he's talking to Ray about like, you know, you don't serve any purpose, and that's not what I was talking about at all, where he's sort of revealing about what he thinks his purpose is to help his brother. And I feel like that doesn't really rise to any kind of higher message or bigger message. And I think the movie could have really benefited from. Definitely. And that's pretty much purely a personal opinion. Right. Like, I think it's masterfully made as a movie, but for me to give it like a really high score, I think I would need it to rise to that level where it meant something more than just, oh, that was a fun experience to watch and look at.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give it 4 fingers.
Mike, give it 5 fingers. Don't be confused. You're just going to make this worse for me.
So obviously come out to 4.5 fingers. Don't have to round that down. Just which I think is the second highest of the year. I think it'll be behind Dunkirk.
Okay.
So that's in the top 5 for sure, if not the top 2.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty impressive. Let's wrap this up real quick. If you agree or disagree, please leave a comment below on SoundCloud or YouTube or wherever you're listening or watching to this episode. Hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, any of our social media. We're on Snapchat now. We're trying to promote that now. About that, yeah, we're on HMF Podcast on Snapchat. You'll get some snaps maybe from tonight as we crash somebody's 21st birthday party tonight at Stephanie's at Doylestown, or just other podcast happenings. You can find pretty much everything you need to find at howmanyfingerspodcast.com. You can rate us on iTunes there. You can subscribe to our mailing list. You can find our merch link, howmanyfingerspodcast.bigcartel.com as well, where you can buy koozies, t-shirts, stickers, all that ish. And then our Amazon link and our iTunes link. You click on either. Anything you purchase within 24 hours within each respective platform will get a nice cut of each. Really easy way to support the podcast without going too far out of your way. And we've got another episode on the docket ready to go, so we're going to sign out real quick. I'm Mike.
I'm Joe.
For How Many Fingers Podcast. And we'll see you next week.